Right, so this is the agenda. Today, me and some colleagues, and also we have a guest with us, will tell you a little bit more about the startup program that we have here at AI Sweden. So the agenda, as you can see on the screen, I will start by presenting AI Sweden, what we do, what type of organization we are, and also the startup program itself, what it consists of, the modules. Then we have with us my colleague Mats Nordlund, who will tell you more about the data factory and our edge lab. That is one of our partner offerings at AI Sweden. Then with us also, we have Scale Out Systems and Jens Friis. Scale Out Systems are a startup partner since last autumn. And Jens will tell you a little bit more about their experience, how they have been interacting with us and taken part of our offer. And then we'll end the session with the Q&As. And also, I really like to hear your ideas and thoughts of how you see that we can create value together and support you in the best possible ways. So, AI Sweden is a national initiative, and our mission is to accelerate applied AI in Sweden. We do this for the benefit of society, for our competitiveness, and for everyone living here, actually. So that's our goal. That's what we work for every day and in all our different actions. As I said, we are a national center. We started 2 years ago. It was an initiative, it's funded partly by Vinnova, but we also consist of partner funding. And I'll come back to that. We have more than 100 partners actually as of today. We are neutral and non-profit, and with this broad funding, we feel that we have a solid base to do our to fulfill our mission actually. And we are here to help you in different ways. I'll come back to how exactly. We are represented across Sweden. We call our different co-locations, we call them nodes. And we operate through regional partners, mostly science parks. So in Gothenburg, it's Lindholmen Science Park. In Stockholm, it's Kista Science City. We have Mobile Heights and Blue Science Park down in the south of Sweden. And up in the north, we actually collaborate with 3 organizations. It's Bron Innovation in Sundsvall, it's Luleå Science Park, and it's Skellefteå Science City. So by this, we feel that we have a broad representation of most parts of Sweden, and we're very, very happy for that presence that we can actually present today. As I said, we have more than 100 partners. They come from different sectors from our society. We have the public sector represented by myndigheter, as we said, public organizations, but also regions and municipalities that we work with. From the academia side, we have the big universities, but we also have research institutes like RISE and such. From the private sector, as you see in the bottom part of the picture, we have the really big corporates like Volvo, like Sony, like Google and Ericsson. And we have the middle-sized one, mainly also consultancy firms coming into that sector, like CGI, Tieto, KPMG, etc. And then in the left-hand bottom corner, we have the smaller ones where we have the startups represented. I'll come back to that. We have today 30 startup partners and then some small SMEs also in that sector. And together with all our partners, we want to create value. And I'll come back to how we do it with engaging in projects and working within our strategic programs. This is a quite simple way of telling you all about our partner offering. It can be divided into 5 main areas. We do lots of training and education. Oh, someone is not muted, I think.
Yeah.
I think someone is not muted. Can you please mute?
Katarina, I think you can mute them by being the host here.
Yeah. I'm just trying to find out who it is.
I think it's Magnus.
Okay, there. Sorry about that. So we have the training programs. We do lots of training programs. We have an open offer of training programs, and we also offer tailor-made training programs for our partners, so that we can actually help, for example, Volvo Group with a training program for their specific needs. And I'll come back to that. We have different types of networks that we interact with. We have regional networks where regional partners from the regions, they can actually exchange their challenges and share knowledge on how they work with their AI transformation. And of course, the startup community that we have is also a very important network to us. We do a lot of projects, so we work with projects, and the projects, they are actually part of our strategic programs. We have identified some strategic important areas that we work with. One is NLP, or language, different types of language technologies. Another one is distributed learning, federated learning projects. That's another thing that we work a lot with. So partners, when they come into us, they can actually engage in those areas and in those projects. Often the projects are externally financed. And then we have the data factory. I won't go so much into detail because my colleague Mats Nordlund will tell you much more about that when he comes. But it consists of compute and storage capacity. And we have also, since only a bit more than a month now, or soon a month, launched something called the Edge Lab. And that's a collaboration between Volvo and Sensact and HPE that are some of our big partners. And then within the strategic partner programs, we have the startup program. We also have something called the Executive AI Accelerator. There are representatives from our main corporate partners, the big ones, and their top executives share knowledge and challenges in a setting where they can feel confident about that. So now we come to the main point of today, which is our startup program and what we offer within that frame. Our startup program is a program with 3 stages that we call Learn, Connect, and Accelerate. Important to say already from the start is that the 3rd level, or the 3rd stage, Accelerate, is only accessible after invitation from AI Sweden, and I'll come back to what that implies. The target groups for these different stages, for the very first stage, the learn stage, as we call it, there we address early stage startups that are in the beginning of their AI journey. Maybe you don't work with AI today, maybe you think of adding AI to your solution. And then you can take part in our open offer of trainings and webinars. The second stage, the connect stage, are the 3 dots to the left. That's for startups that are already a registered company. There you work with AI as core part of your business. You also have in-house AI engineers or data scientists, or you can prove a significant use of AI. So it can be either or. And then for the startups that we invite to become partner on the third level, they are more mature. They're the startups that actually are ready to scale. So you've been up and running for some time. You have your proof of concept. And it's also for startups that we see add a value to, or that can add a value to other AI Sweden partners. And that's because we want those startups to engage in our partner offering, to engage in projects, to engage in the data factory and the edge lab. As I said, it's a 3-stage program. So the first stage for the early startups, then the offer consists of our online courses, our open events and webinars and workshops that we all have on our website. You can also receive our newsletter, so you can learn more about our offerings. The connect stage, that's where you actually fill in an application on our website, and then a committee of AI competent people look at your application. And if you're accepted, a bit like the criteria that I showed in the previous slide, you have a registered company and you work with AI at core, then you become a member of the AI Sweden startup community. You're invited to our Slack channel, and we hold bi-weekly startup community meetings where we share different thoughts. We have speakers invited, both internal AI Sweden colleagues that come and tell you about our offerings or something new that has come up that could be of interest for you. Or we have external guests that come and share their thoughts on a topic. And we also let the startups present themselves so that you can actually get to know the other startups and find synergies. Then on the third level, the invitational level that we call Accelerate, that's when you actually become a full partner of full worthy partner of AI Sweden. As I said, you can then engage in our projects. You get the possibility to access the data factory and the testbed facilities, such as the Edge Lab that Mats will talk more about. We know that the legal and ethical aspect is something super important when it comes to data sharing and data management. So that's why we have legal expertise in AI Sweden. We can't offer any one-to-one legal support as such, or like advice on a one-to-one basis. But we have something called the legal expert group, and that's our big partners, the big corporate partners mainly, that participate in what we call the legal expert network. It has just recently started, so it's not been up and running for a long time, but the aim is to share knowledge and thoughts that comes out of those meetings, and so that we can share that in the startup community as well. As I said, so in the connect stage, I forgot to say that, but there we organize sort of open meetups for the startup community with corporate partners, or that it could be a municipality if that could be of interest, or other collaborators such as investors. And then on the third stage, for those who are full worthy partners, we can actually make one-to-one introductions to those investors or corporates. Some figures on the learn stage, as I said, it's a little bit of a vague figure because obviously there could be many more participating in our open events that are startups, but maybe they haven't signed up for our newsletter. But we have more than 120 who signed up for the actual newsletter. We have 25 startups that are on the second level, on the Connect level. And on the third stage, as full-worthy partners, we have today 30 startups. So all in all, we have 55 startups in the community as of today. This is just to give you a vague idea. I'm not showing this to make it a competition between regions or anything. Obviously, Gothenburg and Stockholm being two of the biggest cities in Sweden, it's maybe not so surprising. And Gothenburg, that's where AI Sweden started. So they had many who joined in the very beginning. But we see now that we are getting startups from other parts of Sweden, and we see this as a super good thing. So poke your other startup friends across the country to give us a shout and watch out what we can offer. This is somehow how we see the ecosystem around AI startups. We see our bubble as just one of the bubbles and the offerings that can help you accelerate your business. So obviously we have our resources, but obviously you need much more than that. You also need the incubators and accelerators, their support, which is much more of a business support, sales, training, pitching help, etc. You need customers, so you need contacts with the corporates and the enterprises. And we are one of many actors that could actually help you in this, since we have, as I said, more than 100 partners. We know that many startups come from university, or so they're sort of research based. But for those who haven't got that many contacts into the universities and research institute, we could also help facilitate that access. The public sector is often a bit difficult to access, being a startup, but through our partner network in that sector, we could also help you with that. And then, of course, you need investments, and that's when we arrange meetups where investors can come and present themselves and learn also more about you and how you work as an AI startup. On the first stage, the learn stage, and of course this is open to everyone, regardless of which stage of the program you are at. But this is just an example of the upcoming events that we have, our open offer. We often organize them together with another partner organization. So the two first ones you can see there together with Luleå Science Park. We organize an event next Friday, super interesting, together with Industrifonden, where they have actually released a thesis on how they see AI and what is needed in Sweden to have a thriving industry in going forward. We have lots of NLP workshops, as that's one of our strategic areas. So speech recognition, the one on the 31st of March, as you can see, that's one of in a series of workshops with NLP as a theme. And then we do work a lot with AI transformation, such as how to integrate the right way to think about AI in organizations. And that's a big domain within our what we do actually on a daily basis. So that's also something really good to check out on the 21st of April. And then we have been co-producing Elements of AI, which is a free online course for beginners in AI, I'd say. So if you want to be initiated to the possibilities of AI, what it is, and learn terminology, check that course out. Everything is accessible through our website. So back to the startup partner resources, what we can actually offer to the startups on the third level that are actually full worthy partners. Going back to the circle with the full partner offering, the courses and webinars, that's what the slide before I showed you, the different types of open courses and open trainings we have. In the network section, we have, as I talked about, the startup community, the Slack channel, and the bi-weekly meetings. We also work with what I think quite a few of you have heard about, which is the Swedish AI Startup Landscape, an initiative that we work together with Ignite Sweden on, where we map AI startups. And that's also now part of a European landscape. And I'll come back to a little bit about that. As I said, within on the project side, we have these challenge-driven collaboration projects in different areas. And then the data factory offer. And I will not go more into detail, but I'll leave the word to Mats in just a couple of minutes, and he will go into more about that. The first two levels of our programs, the Learn stage and the Connect stage, they are free of charge. We don't ask for anything. The partners who come in on the third level that are actually partners, they all contribute in kind. And this is, this is just an example or some examples of in-kind activities that startups can help with. So it could be produce or contribute to a training module with your expertise. It could be to host a hackathon or a workshop. It could be that you put your solution up for trial for a limited period of time, for a couple of weeks, maybe for other AI Sweden partners to try it out. It could be support to the data factory to help with some kind of data management or annotation help. Or it could be to deliver a report on a relevant, obviously scientific topic, an AI topic. Maybe you have already, maybe you need to work on a report as such anyway, and then that could be a deliverable for in-kind. So these are just examples, and obviously it's all very much on a what we agree on together, that we see create value for you as well to deliver. As I said, the Swedish AI landscape is now part of an European initiative, which is the European AI Startup Landscapes. We have Germany and France that have onboarded now, and we are ready to onboard more countries very soon. And on the Swedish landscape, we have a little bit more than 150 Swedish AI startups today, and they are being evaluated before admission by a super strong evaluation team that come from academia, from the investor side, from the scientific side, we have representatives from other startups, from incubators, etc. So it's a broad base in the committee. So that was end of my presentations. Before I hand over to Mats Nordlund, my colleague, I'd like to hear if there are already now any questions. Otherwise, I'll hand over to Mats.
All right, thank you so much, Katarina. I will try to share my screen here now and see if I can get it up and running. So can you see my screen now? Yep, good. All right, thanks so much. So what I'm going to talk about today is what we call the data factory, and why it is, and what it is, and what some of the things that are being done there as examples. So I want to start by going here into, let me see, why we have a data factory. This was something that we came up with when we created AI Sweden back in 2017, which sets us apart from other international AI centers. The idea was that when you do AI, you not only need data, but you also need the processing facilities and ability to process the data and change the data and work with the data. So we said, if we can provide both of them to our partners, we have something that they don't have in other countries where they just go out and get some public data sets. So we said, let's try to build that data infrastructure and understanding as well. And if we can have both of the data factory and the research place, or the place where you develop your algorithms, we will have something that should make it possible for Swedish partners here to run faster than you can in other places. So that was the original idea. And that's sort of where the whole thing came from. Now, going forward into where we are today and what you can do is we have a data factory where you can do primarily these 5 things you can see here. So it is an environment where you can explore different solutions to your own infrastructure. There are today many different ways you can do training. You can go and buy cloud services. You can buy compute power yourself of various sizes. If you look at us in the automotive industry, where I spend most of my time, our compute capacity that we've invested in, that costs several 100 million kronor for one of these installations that we have, and we have several of them. So you before you go ahead and invest a lot of money, you kind of want to know that what you're going to invest in is going to work and be right for you. We want also to share knowledge from different companies and different universities and others who have bought equipment, what has worked and what has been the challenges, so that we can avoid repeating mistakes between other partners. There are tools that one can use. We like to share that as well. It's hard to find them on the commercial market, but many times we develop our own little things, and we can share them if we want to. Some of us have donated data sets that can be used to test equipment on, and you have access to that. And you can have some time, of course, to train in our equipment. The whole idea is to make it possible to innovate, to reduce risks of buying the wrong things, and to accelerate your development of your own AI. That's what this should be doing. The data factory has 3 parts. It's the regular training environment, which is essentially a storage and compute facility where you can train your algorithms on some data. It's not the biggest in the country, but it's certainly good enough. It's today an A100 that we have, which is a very powerful NVIDIA machine. Plus, we also have Google Cloud credits that one can use for training up to proof of concept level. We have a test bed, and this is what's unique. This is something that nobody else has of the same capacity that we do. And this is a place where you can bring in equipment, or you can work with manufacturers of equipment and test what works and what doesn't work for you, and what's the right thing. And then we have our groups, our knowledge sharing community, where we have one for lawyers, we have one for IT people, and we're setting up a few more now, where people with certain interests can get together and share their experiences and their knowledge about how to work with data and how to work with this infrastructure. Here are some examples of shared data sets that we have received from partners. AstraZeneca, for example, has donated a rather large data set on cell images. We have from SLU, which is the Swedish Agriculture University, also a very useful data set on seabirds, which we have used for doing benchmarking on object detection and other things like that. It's very good because it has no problems with privacy and GDPR and things like that. So it's proven to be a very good data set for just doing object detection and things like that to test different equipment on. Volvo Group has donated a highway data set for doing various types of autonomous drive related training, and we have a couple of more incoming. So one is on the news media side, and there's a few more that's coming in. what partners do to generate value from all this is that they often have hackathons. And the ones that donate, I should say, the ones that have donated, and of course anybody else can do it as well. But we've had hackathons on space data that was arranged by Rymdstyrelsen, the space agency. We've had the wildlife hackathon that was done by this agriculture university at the same time they first donated the seabirds. And then we've had AstraZeneca on their cells. There's been a few more that's been planned, but they were put on ice during the COVID situation, but we think they're going to pick up here now again, coming towards the summer. You can read more about the data sets and about these hackathons on our website. So there's more information about that there. And then, of course, as I pointed out, we have this training environment, the compute power there, where you can go in and do some training of algorithms to see how it works. We have the knowledge groups, and we have the test bed. And the test bed is something I'm going to come back to soon, and I'm going to explain specifically how some companies got together and created this edge lab. But we've seen other activities on the test bed as well. We've had some companies come in wanting to test performance of different machines. So they've done some benchmarking. They've had the same training arrangements, and they trained on a couple of different setups and to see which one was best or took least time. Some of them developed tools, the MLOps, and wanted us to test their tools and see how they worked and what was the security levels. And the idea of testing it with us is that you can access our equipment, but if you work with us on that, we want to be able to share some of the general learnings with the other partners so that everybody benefits from these tests. Of course, the details, and if it's something that's directly related to your company business, that's yours. But if there's some general findings about, for example, performance of certain machines or the utility of certain tools and so forth, that's something we'd like to be able to share so that we can create benefit for the entire ecosystem, AI ecosystem here. The training, the Edge lab, or the Edge training lab, as we call it, is one example of where a number of companies got together and built something that's quite exciting in this test bed. The background is the following, that it came from the automotive side. We have several automotive partners, Zenseact, Volvo Cars, Volvo Group are in here. And they identified the problem that each of these cars that you can see here collect a lot of data every second. They collect several gigabits of data per second in one of these cars. And to develop these autonomous car algorithms, the companies will benefit from sharing this data and transferring it to other companies and between themselves and between countries, so that we can learn from different road scenarios around the world. But when you do that, you run into the problems you can see here on the right. There's a lot of energy that's needed to process all this data. There's a lot of cost to store all the data and to transfer it. There's delays when you transfer a lot of data. It takes a long time, and there are rules also maybe preventing you even from sharing or storing data, especially if it has to do with privacy. So the thinking in the industry was that we don't think that just collecting more and more data and building bigger and bigger computers will solve all the world's problems. There's got to be some other answers. And to formulate the problems very clearly, the companies essentially came up with the following problem formulation: that we want more data and we want less data, because we can't just have all these big piles of data. We want to share the data, but we have to keep it private, and we want to transfer the data, and we want to keep it local. So what you can see here is a number of paradoxes. And so it doesn't seem like you can solve this other than just the standard Swedish way of doing things in a lagom way, which is sort of an optimized, trying to optimize and compromise your way through it. But in this case, compromises didn't work. So instead, when you're faced with this, let's reformulate the problem and ask the questions differently, and saying the data is really born on the edge, which means out by the end users. Why don't we keep it there? Do we really need to transfer it back? And that's sort of the second question, saying that when we want to aggregate or collect the data, isn't it really the knowledge or the model parameters that we want to aggregate? So if you change the questions and ask these two questions instead, then you find something called federated learning. And federated learning was first suggested by Google in 2016. So this is a very new way of approaching the way you train an AI. And it's illustrated here by the cars. What you can see here is that you make an algorithm, you send it out to your cars, or if you don't use cars, you can send it to your cell phones or some other smart devices that you guys use. Anyway, you send it over there and it's trained locally on these devices. So it collects data and it trains here, and then it sends back not the data, but only the model parameters from the algorithm. And then it's merged in the central location, and then you update it. You update the algorithm, you send out the algorithm again, and then you have a better algorithm. And then you can do this several times, and that way you can train it. Or you can do the exact same thing in this way, and you let one of the cars be the unit that actually collects it. And that's called swarm learning. So with that in mind, we built with the automotive guys something that looks like this. And the purpose of this is to just learn how to do it. So it's relatively easy to understand what you saw in the previous picture of the idea, but to actually make it, it's much more difficult. So we built this, and now we are in the phase where we can actually start experimenting and learning together of how do we set this up? How does it scale? How big of these swarms can you have? Are there some use cases where it doesn't work, or are there some use cases where this is especially good? So we're really now spending a lot of time trying to learn it. And we're also looking for smaller startup companies who want to get in here and build some business in developing tools for this, or developing special solutions that can make this more accessible for different industries. It's not only for automotive. We've seen that there's an interest in this in many areas, the medical area and in banks and in building construction area. And it really seems to be applicable pretty much anywhere you go. So together in this new lab, and this is just one example, we learn how to build, we learn the tools, we learn what use cases to apply, we learn about security to make sure that we have things that can't be hacked too easily, and also learn as a company, how can we develop our strategy given this. And edge training is one, but we also see other initiatives now coming into the test beds, experimenting with other things as well. So I just want to give you this edge training lab as an example, where partners just got together and said, this is important, let's build it and see how it works, and then it happened. So with that, it was a quick overview of the data factory, which, as I said, had three parts, which is the general training possibilities, the test bed, and the knowledge sharing communities, and then the example of the Edge Lab. Any questions to me before I pass it back here to?
Yeah, fantastic. Do ask questions to Mats. He has the fantastic knowledge about all these things. And obviously, if you have no questions now and you think about them later, you're also welcome to contact us, either Mats directly or go through me.
Yeah.
No, I can't.
All right, then I'll turn off my microphone.
Yeah, yeah. Just like Peter put in the chat that if you want to write questions, it's also possible to do it through the chat, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, I say thank you very much, Mats, for participating and being here with us today and telling us all about this.
Thank you, too.
And I'd now like to present you to Jens Frid from Scale Out Systems. And Scale Out, you are a startup and you joined us in the autumn, and you're a startup partner on the third level. And I asked you to be with us today to share a little bit about how you have spent your time with us and what you've been up to. So I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Katarina. So first, a microphone check. Can you hear me okay? Excellent, good. So hi, everyone. My name is Jens, and I'm one of the founders of Scale Out. And thanks to Katarina and AI Sweden for inviting us to this session. So I'll give you a quick introduction to us and also a few of our activities together with AI Sweden. So Scale Out, develop solutions in machine learning and distributed systems. And we're coming from, or you could say our motivation comes from the fact that we think that data is now the most valuable asset. And also that the concept of the distributed cloud, where data will be created and processed outside of traditional centralized data centers or clouds, will kind of grow and increase with time. And this is why we're focusing on federated learning and also what we call MLOps for the distributed cloud. So Scale-Out is a startup born out of Uppsala University. We have 9 people in our team. But we're also working quite closely with Uppsala University and have working with 2 research groups there doing research in federated learning and distributed systems. So federated learning is still quite a new field within machine learning. So there are a few kind of unknowns or unsolved kind of a few challenges that needs to be kind of looked into more deeply. So we're active on the research side, but we are an applied company. So we're creating our own solution around federated learning. So, and yeah, so we have a few partnerships and one of them is of course with AI Sweden, which is wonderful and great. And we're also working with NVIDIA and SafeSpring, which is a Swedish cloud service company here. And that matches our kind of efforts in general, so that's very good. So we're focusing on creating a solution for federated learning, but we're also actively working with customers in different industries. For example, we're working with AstraZeneca, SciLife Labs, Citiva, Tyrens, which is a civil engineering company, Research Laboratories, Scandidus, to name a few. So quite a lot in pharma and life science, but that's a little because we have a background there, and also Uppsala is a life science hub. And we have received funding from both Vinnova and Horizon 2020 and have projects running together there. So I'd like to, we are quite active in AI Sweden, I would say, and in the applied AI projects and in the strategic programs. We, especially within what is called decentralized AI, where we bring our expertise in federated learning to AI Sweden and the collaborators around that. And I'd like to give you a few examples. So as mentioned earlier, we're working with this virtual testbed where we are trying to build up the collective know-how and skills around this federated learning, but also kind of looking closer on how to place this in a legal context, because it's, yeah, as with technology, it's always pushing boundaries. So this is important too to understand. Just to give an example, many of you know of GDPR regulation and how that can be a challenge when working with data. So federated learning could potentially be a workaround around that. So you can kind of use the data without looking at the data in a sense. And then yes, exactly, the legal group I mentioned. Good. What else? So federated learning, as Mats mentioned earlier, could also potentially be very useful in a setting where you have a lot of data generated at the edges, on a sensor level. So it could make sense to move inference and also perhaps the training of models closer to where the data is generated. So we have a small part in the Edge Lab initiative too. And as another example, I can mention an NLP project that we are involved with. So machines understanding written and spoken words is both an important area, but also very interesting. On many occasions, a lot of the valuable data needed to train NLP models, especially for a small language like Swedish, is out of reach because of it could be privacy concerns, or for other reasons where data cannot be kind of accessed freely. So we're running a pilot study together with the Natural Library of Sweden and AI Sweden to explore if federated learning could be a way to work around this challenge. And what else? Yes, so finally, like I mentioned, we're also part of the training programs within AI Sweden around change management, where we kind of provide some guidance around how to implement and work with machine learning and AI projects in organizations. So I think that's a brief overview of Scale Out and also our involvement in AI Sweden and its efforts to accelerate AI in Sweden. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jens. Maybe there are questions for you. I don't know. Curious to understand and learn more about federated learning or how they work. Well, thank you very much, Jens, for being with us and telling us how you have been interacting with us. That's we often say as that we want to share with many. So we invest together, and then we want that knowledge to be shared amongst many. So we at AI Sweden, we try to avoid the sort of bilateral projects or engagements. We want the outcome of projects and the outcome of trainings or testbeds to be accessible for many and to create value for many. So that's one of our sort of cornerstones. I'd like to open up now for your thoughts, those of you who participate and who represent startups. I'm very curious to hear what you think about this initiative and how you see yourself, or if you see yourself as a potential member in our program, and how any thoughts on how we can help you to create value, because that's why we are here. Yes, Jesper?
Yes, I figured I'd just go for it here. I was just invited to this event recently here, and I think it sounds very interesting. I come from a startup called Finch. We're doing a digital software for architects, the kind of architects that design buildings, actual buildings that you sit in. And we're going to start looking into AI to generate floor plans very soon here, and I think this sounds very promising. And my first question, of course, is who and when can I reach out to someone in the southern region here we're based in Malmö?
Yeah, I can I can contact you directly with the contact details for our South node. We have our colleague Malin Larsson, who is at Mobile Heights in Malmö, and together with Erik Wilson, they work with the southern region. And also we have our colleague Johan Butch, which he is located in Blekinge in the Karlskrona, the Blue Science Park there. But I can definitely put you in contact with Malin.
Yeah, and thanks a lot for the great presentations. Super nice initiative.
Yeah, that's very nice to hear. I have a question in the chat now from Benny. Thanks for great presentation. I was wondering where the incubators are located. Actually, we have been in discussions with or had meetings with incubators that are located in our different nodes. So it's not actually our own incubators, it's the incubators that already exist in those areas. So for instance, it's LEAD in Linköping, it's Sting in Stockholm. We've been talking to Chalmers Ventures in Gothenburg. We've been talking to both Fégeant Innovation and with Mink in Malmö. And the Arctic Business Incubator up in the north. And yes, as Peter just put in the chat, through SISP, the site SISP, Swedish Incubators and Science Parks, you can actually find a list of all incubators and accelerators in Sweden. So I believe that most of you that are with us now today, you have had the word has spread from your incubator or accelerator that you are part of. I guess that's the main source this time. So as I said, it's we want to help all AI startup, regardless on the phase of your AI journey, on how far you have come. So for those of you who think of putting AI into your startup to help accelerate your business or lift it, then we have lots to offer you. If you are already working with AI, we have even more to offer you. And for the very mature startups, it's also an even broader offer. I see something in the chat. As representative from AI, I'd like to add that we push an informed about AI Sweden to our startup. Well, that's super nice to hear that. Yes, I see that we have representatives also from some of the science parks. So that's fantastic. This we've now been recording this session, and we plan to hold these webinars on a more or less regular basis. So maybe the next one will be just before the summer or just after the summer. We'll get back to that. So for those of you who know other startups that are interested, either they can watch the recording, we will link that out, or we will communicate a new date for the next webinar where we do this. But if you have any thoughts that come up after this webinar that you come to think of with any ideas or questions, don't hesitate to contact us. I'll put my mail in the chat so you can reach out, and my phone number as well. And I'll be happy to jump on a call with you or reply by mail or Zoom or whatever fits you.